Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. Hamas launching more rockets and Israel unleashing more airstrikes. What do both sides of the conflict have to say, and how is the U.S. responding? The U.S. Marshals say they found a record number of missing children last year. They say there are many more children missing. An officer in the Space Force is relieved of his duties after speaking out against Marxism and critical race theory in the military. What does that officer have to say about Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin? And the CEO of Delta Airlines is encouraging all employees to get vaccinated. He explains that all new employees joining the company will also need the shot before they can start on the job. The Supreme Court agrees to hear a dispute over a Mississippi abortion law that bans all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, except for medical emergencies or severe abnormalities in the fetus. The case could put Roe v. Wade's ruling into question. The case was brought to the highest court by the Attorney General of Mississippi. This is after a federal appeals court ruled the abortion ban placed a burden on women who want to have abortions. But the Supreme Court wants to only focus on the issue of whether pre-viability bans on abortions are unconstitutional. The court's earlier rulings established women can get abortions before the fetus is viable. Last term, the court blocked a limit on abortions in Louisiana, but the outcome of the current case could be different, since the court now has more conservative justices after Justice Amy Coney Barrett was appointed last year. The court will start hearing arguments in the case in October. More rocket attacks and airstrikes today in the Middle East as the conflict enters a second week. Israel's prime minister says the country has a right to defend itself. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
Thousands of rockets and missiles on our cities, and I think any country has to defend itself.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told CBS Sunday that Israeli defense forces are trying to reduce Hamas's terrorist abilities. In the past week, Hamas fired numerous rockets into Israeli civilian areas, prompting Israel to respond with airstrikes.
We'll do whatever it takes to restore order and quiet and on the security of our people and deterrence. We're trying to degrade Hamas's terrorist abilities and to degrade their will to do this again.
He said any country has to defend itself. Israel launched a new series of airstrikes early Monday. The Palestinian Prime Minister wants the international community to take action.
We follow what is going on minute by minute and call upon the international community to intervene.
President Biden said over the weekend he's working with both Palestinians and Israelis toward a sustained calm.
We also believe Palestinians and Israelis equally deserve to live in safety and security and enjoy equal measure of freedom, prosperity, and democracy.
Have a right to live.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations echoed his statement Sunday, and she said the U.S. is working through diplomatic channels to bring an end to the conflict.
The United States has made clear that we are prepared to lend our support in good offices should the parties seek a ceasefire.
So far, there's no sign of progress on truce efforts. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
The U.S. Marshals say they rescued a record number of missing children last year, including some of the most at-risk children. Floriano Whitwell is a chief inspector for the U.S. Marshals. He tells independent journalist Cheryl Atkinson that they recovered 387 missing children in 2020, and that's the most they've ever recovered in a year. Whitwell says the number is still barely scratching the surface of the problem. According to the FBI, about 400,000 children get reported missing every year. Most of them are considered runaways. Whitwell says, "I personally was extremely concerned by the lack of spotlight, the lack of resources, and just simply the lack of children being recovered across our country." He says he decided to make it his focus. One project alone, Operation Volunteer Strong in Tennessee, resulted in 150 recovered children. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Director David Roush says hundreds of children go missing in his state every month. Law enforcement officials say missing children are at risk for physical or sexual abuse, neglect, drug exposure, gang affiliation, and other dangers. Recently, Operation Homecoming rescued 21 children in Iowa. Law enforcement officials say they were some of the most high-risk cases. Some were as young as 4. Roush says many children run away out of desperation or despair, and some are lost over a custody dispute. He says every single missing child deserves a fighting chance and the best effort from law enforcement. A commanding officer in the U.S. Space Force is now without a post. He was fired after publishing a book about the spread of Marxism and critical race theory in the military. Here are the details.
Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer served as the commander of the 11th Space Warning Squadron. The Space Force told news outlets over the weekend it relieved Lohmeyer on May 14th due to loss of trust and confidence in his ability to lead, saying they're investigating whether his recent comments in a podcast constitute partisan political activity. Lohmeyer's comments were likely in reference to the spread of Marxism in the military. He detailed this point of view in his recent book called Irresistible Revolution, Marxism's Goal of Conquest and the Unmaking of the American Military. When Lohmeyer appeared on the podcast Information Operation to promote his book, he criticized Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's agenda. After Austin was confirmed, he ordered a stand-down to deal with alleged extremism in the military. Lohmeyer said, "I don't demonize the man, but I want to make it clear to both him and every service member this agenda, it will divide us, it will not unify us." He said Austin is promoting diversity, inclusion, and equity, which he and others say are rooted in critical race theory, which is rooted in Marxism. Neither the Space Force nor Austin's office immediately responded to a request for comment.
Delta Airlines CEO says that all new hires will have to get vaccinated before starting their jobs, and explained that current employees will be educated about the risks of not being vaccinated.
Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian tells CNN, any person joining Delta in the future employees, we're going to mandate they be vaccinated before they can sign up with the company. The company released a statement with slightly different wording, saying that new employees will have to be vaccinated unless they have certain accommodations. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission says it is not a violation for companies to mandate vaccines, but exceptions have to be made for people with disabilities or religious objections. The commission released official guidance in December, saying, once an employer is on notice that an employee's sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance prevents the employee from receiving the vaccination, the employer must provide a reasonable accommodation for the religious belief, practice, or observance unless it would pose an undue hardship under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Bastian says it wouldn't be fair to force current employees to get a vaccine. He says he's not going to mandate and force people if they have some specific reason why they don't want to get vaccinated, but adds he would strongly encourage them and make sure they understand the risks of opting out. Unvaccinated employees may have to be tested weekly and could be banned from working international flights. Bastian says that over 60% of Delta employees have gotten at least one shot. He expects 80% will eventually get the vaccine. Most U.S. companies don't require vaccines. No other airlines have announced vaccine requirements.
The new GOP conference chair says the Justice Department is trying to block the Maricopa County audit. Representative Elise Stefanik says the department's questions about the audit of the 2020 election may be unconstitutional. This comes after the Justice Department sent a letter to Arizona's Senate leader on May 5th, asking about the custody of ballots under review by a group of private contractors. The letter alleges the contractors were engaging in voter intimidation in some of their processes. Arizona's Senate leader said they've paused verifying certain voters, and that if it's necessary to canvass the addresses to complete the audit, the vendors will make sure the canvassing is done according to the Constitution as well as state civil rights laws. Canada's continuing lockdown measures are clashing with the Christian community in Alberta. One incident has drawn the attention in the international religious community. NTD's Sapphire Quarter tells us more.
The arrest of a Canadian pastor on a highway is drawing international outrage. We spoke with some American citizens who feel strongly about the issue and are voicing their support for the pastor. Arthur Pawlowski and his brother were arrested for holding a church service that violated providential pandemic restrictions, like mask wearing and social distancing. Pawlowski's church has been continually going against Alberta's pandemic restrictions. One man we spoke to says lockdown measures like these go against basic human rights.
If you think that you're free, you're not free. You're just free all in your mind. If someone could come to you and stop your religious practices and prevent you from worshiping in church and having your priest or whoever your leader of your congregation is arrested, I mean, where's it going to end?
Calgary police said in a statement about the recent arrest, law enforcement recognizes people's desire to participate in faith-based gatherings as well as the right to protest. However, as we find ourselves in the midst of a global pandemic, we all must comply with public health orders in order to ensure everyone's safety and well-being. Currently, all indoor gatherings, public and private, are legal, with some exceptions such as those living alone. Outdoor gatherings are limited to 10 people. After hearing about the recent arrest, nonprofit Polonia United arranged a protest in front of the Canadian embassy. The leader, Wiktek Roskowski, says he supports Pastor Pawlowski's efforts. Prior to his arrest, police came to his church when he was not following social distancing rules. He threw them out and compared them to the Gestapo. Rowinski argues it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely, it was the right thing to do. I wish we all would be able to do it, or have enough guts and courage and support from people who surround us.
He says he grew up in communist Poland and explained that in his eyes, today's restrictions seem like a rebirth of communism, this time in America. The pastor was released from custody last Monday. His court date is scheduled for later this week. Sapphire Quarter, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, a new glass elevator takes visitors to the peak of one of Manhattan's tallest buildings. Residents and visitors will be able to enjoy the bird's eye view starting this October. And a wildfire burns 1,300 acres in a Los Angeles suburb. Over 1,000 residents evacuate. 2 arson suspects were detained. Find out more here on NTD News.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
Kids will be kids, which just goes to say kids will be curious. They get into everything. If there's a loaded firearm in the house, they could get their hands on that too. Keeping firearms locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition in a place inaccessible to kids can help keep your loved ones safe from family fire. Safe gun storage saves lives.
About 1,000 residents in Los Angeles, California are still under evacuation orders after a wildfire gained momentum in the Santa Monica Mountains on Sunday. 2 suspects have been detained as arson investigators and police look into the cause of the blaze. 1 suspect was released on Saturday and another questioned on Sunday. There are no reports of building damage or injuries so far.
Over 1,300 acres of California woodland went up in smoke on Sunday after a wildfire blazed out of control in a Los Angeles suburb. More than 1,000 residents of the Pacific Palisades have been forced to evacuate. Video obtained by Reuters showed helicopters trying to douse the fire with buckets of water as smoke billowed from the hills. Local media reported authorities saying that some of the affected areas had old growth that hadn't been burned in over 50 years. Arson investigators and police looked into the cause of the blaze that began Friday and is now being dubbed the Palisades Fire. One official with the Los Angeles Fire Department said one of 2 suspects detained has since been released, while the other is still being questioned. Mandatory evacuations were also ordered for an area near Topanga Canyon, while other residents are on standby to leave. There are no reported deaths or casualties so far.
The University of California is changing its admissions process. Its 9 campuses won't consider standardized test scores anymore, a decision stemming from a lawsuit that claims the tests are racist. Multiple groups sued the University of California to stop them from using SAT and ACT test scores in admissions. The tests have been a core part of the college admissions process for decades. Those opposing the tests argue that students of certain races score lower on average than other races. As part of the settlement, the University of California agreed to stop using the tests. They'll also pay $1.25 million for the plaintiffs' legal expenses. College Board of Creators of the SAT told the Epoch Times that the test is not racist. The nonprofit explained that every question is examined for evidence of bias and that biased questions are removed. They say the test shows what students have learned in school. Those who still support the tests say that every student is given the same test and the same opportunity. Breathtaking views of New York's iconic skyline will soon be available from an all-new observation deck. Located in Midtown Manhattan, this skyscraper ranks among the city's tallest. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
1,100 feet above New York City, the 93rd floor of One Vanderbilt offers incredible views of the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, and the Statue of Liberty. The 1,401-foot tall skyscraper is the tallest building in Midtown Manhattan, and the fourth tallest in New York City. The $3.3 billion development next to Grand Central Terminal features Summit One Vanderbilt, a 4-level, 65,000 square foot space at the top of the building.
We're already seeing the city reopening right now. You know, it's May, and there's a whole vibe in the city now that really didn't exist as much as 2 or 3 months ago. I think this is the right moment for Summit One Vanderbilt when people are going to be fully vaccinated, ready to get out of their homes.
The building's all-glass elevator is named Ascent. It travels up the outside of the building to views that soar 1,200 feet above the city. Visitors will be able to step out in glass skyboxes called levitation. They suspend guests 1,000 feet above Madison Avenue.
When you sit up here and you look out at this vista, I mean, there's no better shot, I don't think, of downtown, the Empire State Building. We've got views out to Jones Beach, Sandy Hook, and West Point to the north, and it's just very exhilarating.
Summit One Vanderbilt opens to the public on October 21st. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up, Olympic teams reveal some of this year's outfits. Even Russia, a country banned from using their flag, shows us what they've prepared. Stay tuned to find out more. We're about 9 weeks away from the Olympics, and athletes are unveiling their custom-made outfits they'll wear during their time in Tokyo. NTD's Miguel Moreno gives us a look at this year's gear.
Germany and the UK have revealed what their teams will wear at this year's Olympic Games. Japan will host this year's Games in just 11 weeks. Great Britain showcased its outfits this month, featuring intricate Japanese iconography and a contemporary UK flag. Germany took a playful, modern route. Adidas design director Melina Harsman says that message is conveyed in how they altered the flag's symbols.
This way, these classic symbols no longer appear serious and heavy, but light, playful, and modern.
Harsman says they used prime blue to make these outfits. It's material made of recycled polyester and plastics found in the ocean. Team USA's outfitter had a similar idea.
Like the Olympics, sustainability is a team effort.
That's why Ralph Lauren worked to create a better collection for Team USA.
From an innovative dyeing process that uses less water, less chemicals, less energy,
to sourcing more sustainable materials.
Ralph Lauren has made clothes for Team USA since 2008, but the company says these clothes are only for the closing ceremony. Then there's Russia, banned from using their flag and playing their national anthem in this year's games. That's because the International Olympic Committee said they found evidence of Russia tampering with lab data to hide hundreds of potential cases of doping, and falsely blaming that tampering on whistleblowers. Even without a flag, the Olympic Russian Committee president says neither fans nor athletes were disappointed.
On the contrary, it will become our lucky star for the Tokyo Games.
Japan, the Olympics host, is dealing with a COVID-19 surge. Tokyo recently extended its state of emergency until May 31st. Under this emergency order, bars, restaurants, and other places are closed. Other businesses are also restricted. This has raised questions about whether Tokyo will be able to host the Olympics. By the end of the emergency order, if it hasn't been extended, there will be a 2-month period before the games are set to start. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Your body uses water for countless essential functions, which can break down if you're thirsty or dehydrated. Let's look at some of the ways it keeps your body healthy.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body, I'm Gina Marie. So what's the most important nutrient that you need to consume several times each day? If you guessed protein, vitamin C or calcium, you'd be wrong, it's water. Even though water isn't a vitamin or mineral, it's a nutrient that's vital to human life. If you think otherwise, consider this. You can live for weeks without food, but only a few days without water. It's considered essential because your body needs more than it can produce on its own. That's because you lose a lot of water each day through evaporation, elimination, respiration, and sweat. Water is an incredible workhorse in so many ways. Here are 9 of the things it does to keep you healthy. Number 1, fluid balance. Water helps to maintain the balance of fluids in your body. You're made up of about 60% water, and when you become oversaturated, you lose water through urination. If you are dehydrated, your brain signals you to drink more by signaling thirst. Number 2, body temperature. Water helps to regulate your body temperature through the evaporation of sweat. Number 3, calorie control. The water content in your food actually helps you to control calories. Food that contains a lot of water, such as fruits, vegetables, and soups, are more filling than foods with low water content, and eating water-heavy foods helps signal your body to stop eating. Number 4, digestion. Water supports your digestion and keeps your bowels moving. Number 5, joint fluid. In your joints, water in the form of joint fluid acts as a cushion to help absorb shock and to slow wear and tear. Number 6, blood pressure. Water is a fundamental component in controlling your blood pressure. Number 7, brain fluid. Your brain is more watery than your body, consisting of 73% water. When you become dehydrated, it can affect your mood, decrease cognitive function, affect your memory, and make you more sensitive to pain. Number 8, oxygen. Water helps boost your immunity by flushing toxins from your body and ushering oxygen to all your cells. Remember, the O is for oxygen in H2O. Number 9, skin health. Do you want healthier looking skin? Well, drink up. Well-hydrated skin is plump and glowing, while dehydration makes your skin look dry and wrinkled. Dry skin also slows down wound healing. So how much should you drink each day? It depends. Experts recommend somewhere between 4 and 8 cups, but that depends on the medications you're taking, physical activity, age, and overall health.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.